Not many guys have come over and had success recently. Patchy Mix didn't fight to his ability when he got here. Patricio Pitbull didn't fight to his ability when he got here. Michael Chandler's 2-5 or 2-6 right now. What are you going to do different, right? Because at this point, the expectation is that the guys come over and it's not the same. Ask Coach. Coach will tell you, when we came here from Strikeforce, guys won, right? So it was like the Strikeforce guys win. The Bellator guys haven't. Like, what are you going to do to make sure that you're not on that side, especially with a guy like Lerone Murphy as the opponent?
Well, I don't want to sound cocky or anything like that. You know, they're all great fighters, but I'm Aaron Pico.
Yeah.
It's different in my mind.
All right, so Aaron Pico and Kai Asakura, two guys who the UFC promoted as the next big things in their respective divisions, got brutally humbled at UFC 319, and frankly, I can't help but laugh at how the UFC tried to build these guys up as something that they're not. The hype machine gave them completely unwarranted primetime spots and insisted that they were the ones to watch, and the narrative was that these guys would walk in from Bellator and Rizin and shake things up. But as it turns out, Pico got flatlined in a co-main event spot that he had no business being in, and Assakura, who was a champion in Rizin, got submitted by the journeyman Tim Elliott. Now, have there been successful UFC imports from outside promotions? Absolutely. For example, Michael Venom Page and Ranier de Ritter are doing very well since they joined the promotion. But cases like Pico Asakura and especially Patchy Mix, all from within the last few months, are hilarious reminders on what passes for elite competition outside the UFC. Success in Bellator, Rizin, or 1FC doesn't really mean all that much to me until they step into the shark tank that is the UFC. But these promotions let these glorified journeymen beat up even worse journeymen, and then all the pretentious hardcore fans who want to act like they know so much more than other fans buy into the fantasy. And yeah, in this video I'm going to be talking about all this and more. But first, let's talk about the fights themselves, starting off with Aaron Pico versus Lerone Murphy. Not really too much to say about this one, seeing as it ended about 3 minutes into the first round. I mean, he was pressuring well, and he landed a really good left hook to the body, I guess, but this dude was so in over his head it's not even funny. Even with Lerone being a short notice replacement, Pico still got sent to the Shadow Realm after getting sniped by a spinning elbow.
I'm a wrestler, so I've known Aaron Pico since he was a little boy. That was a bad knockout. His teeth were clenched together. They couldn't get the mouth guard out. That's very concerning for Aaron Pico. He's been knocked out now multiple times, and when he's gotten knocked out really bad. So, little concern on the Pico side.
As Murphy himself said, Pico's too aggressive when he fights, and considering how chinny he's always been, I cannot believe he still fights so recklessly.
I don't search for it. I knew it was going to come though because of his pressure. He's got solid boxing, man, and I think he'll do well in the UFC. He's going to learn from this. You can't pressure high level fighters like that.
I will say that it was scary how long Aaron was unconscious. It really seemed like he was out for like 5 minutes at least. I know that this entire video was dedicated to him getting fraud checked and all, but at the same time, I'm not celebrating him experiencing brain damage the way that he did. Yes, he talked a very big game heading into this fight, and I'm sure he did believe that he was going to hit the ground running, but this was way too big of a test for him this early into his UFC career, especially with how mid he was in Bellator.
Yeah, now we're here, so the work is just starting. I've been saying, it's like, I don't want a participation trophy for the UFC. I want a belt, and right. I'm not stopping, so.
Okay, now let's talk about Kai Asakura versus Tim Elliott. Kai definitely did better than Aaron did, but at the same time, Tim Elliott is nowhere near the fighter that Lerone Murphy is. Regardless, Asakura looked good early into the fight. He looked confident, he was landing some big shots, and he wasn't getting thrown off too much by Elliott's awkward style. But when Tim secured a takedown at the end of the first round, it was pretty clear that it got into Asakura's head. It's not like the first takedown amounted to anything, but Kai fought much less confidently in round 2 as a result. He started throwing less punches, and he was getting tagged more, probably because he was scared of getting taken down. Elliott secured another takedown, and while Assakura was fighting to stand back up, he left his neck wide open, which led to him getting submitted for the second time in a row across his 2 UFC appearances. I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of crazy to me that Assakura was not only a champion in a major promotion like Rizin, but he's also a massive superstar in Asia. This guy is just not it. Obviously, he's a striker, but is his striking even top 5 in the UFC flyweight division? Because off the top of my head, guys like Joshua Van, Brandon Moreno, Brandon Royval, Manel Kopp, and probably Steve Ursig are all better than him on the feet. And then when you take into account that not only is he weak on the ground, but it seems like he's terrified of being taken down, I'm left questioning what his future in the UFC looks like and how long it's going to last. I'm willing to believe that Kai can turn this dismal start to his UFC career around, but let's be real, the fact that he's getting submitted by a 38-year-old Tim Elliott, whose UFC record was 9-11 going into this fight, is a very real cause for concern. This was supposed to be a guaranteed win for Kai, and he couldn't pull it off. Of course, he gets a pass for losing to Alessandro Pantoja for obvious reasons, but him losing to Elliott is a massive red flag, and now that his grappling grappling has been exposed, I fully expect all of his future opponents to take him down. Okay, I want to zoom out a little bit and talk about both of their careers before signing with the UFC. For reasons I will never understand, Pico was essentially Bellator's chosen one. The guy was signed before he even had an MMA record. They advertised him as a god-tier wrestler, Golden Gloves boxer, prodigy. Bellator handed him every promotional push in the book. He was fighting on big cards from day one, and these Bellator maniacs tried to convince us that he was the second coming of GSP. But when you look at his actual record, he is the definition of a manufactured prospect. Sure, he had flashy KOs in Bellator, and I will even admit that the guys that he's lost to aren't bad fighters, but I wouldn't say that any of them are all that great. His first loss to Zach Freeman was his first MMA fight ever, so I guess I'll give him a pass there. But guys like Henry Corrales, Adam Borix, and Jeremy Kennedy were at the very least solid for Bellator standards. It isn't like he was losing to guys that had losing records or anything like that, but what really stands out to me when it comes to Aaron's pre-UFC career is that he doesn't really have any wins over anybody that's remotely UFC caliber. His best win is either against Leandro Higo, who's just okay, or it's when he avenged his loss to Henry Corrales in PFL, but Corrales had slowed down a lot by the time that the rematch happened. It makes no sense to me how this guy was given a co-main event slot for his UFC debut. Patchy Mix's C3PO looking ass was actually a Bellator champion who had actual noteworthy wins on his resume, and he was the second fight on the UFC 316 main card. What has Aaron Pico done to justify getting fast-tracked the way that he did? Also, wasn't his original opponent supposed to be Movsar Evloev, who a lot of people are saying should be fighting next for the title? Thus, was Pico originally fighting in a title eliminator for his UFC debut? Did the UFC seriously think that he could hang at the top of a division like featherweight with how unproven he was against top-tier competition? Make no mistake about it, this is the UFC's fault, not Aaron's. He was given a great opportunity against a top contender, and he took it as he should have. The real mistake made is that the matchmakers pushed this guy way too hard, way too early, and the only person that paid the price for their mistakes is Aaron. Lerone is very, very good. Is he as good as Movsar? Probably not. But both Murphy and Evloev are miles ahead of Pico because they've been fighting UFC level competition for years. Meanwhile, Pico never even fought for a title in Bellator. I do think it's a shame that Pico got fraud checked the way that he did, but honestly, given the quality of his resume, I never really thought that he would be a top dog in the UFC. But who I did have high hopes for was Kai Asakura. Considering his credentials, accolades, and fame prior to joining the UFC, this guy's UFC career has been a fucking disaster. He's a two-time Ryzen champion who has wins over Kyoji Horiguchi, Manel Kape, and Juan Archuleta, and he has a massive following in Asia. He was supposed to be the UFC's ticket into Asia, which has been a really tough market for them to break into. And although I didn't think that he would beat Pantoja in his UFC debut, I actually didn't mind him getting an immediate title shot. The flyweight division needs new blood, and I figured that even if Assakura lost against Pantoja, then he'd still be able to get wins against a lot of the guys in the top 10, but wow, I was sorely mistaken. Tim Elliott is not a very good fighter by UFC standards. His biggest claim to fame is lasting a decision against Demetrius Johnson almost a decade ago. Since then, he's made a living being a gritty, awkward journeyman. And Assakura, the supposed superstar, folded like a deck chair the moment Elliott dragged him into not even deep water. It was like knee-height water. It's shocking, but also not shocking. Ryzen is a fun promotion, but their talent pool is clearly shallow as a shower, seeing as this guy was able to win the belt there twice. Assakura was racking up wins against guys who wouldn't even get Contender Series contracts. Beating a parade of nobodies in Japan does not prepare you for the grind of the UFC's flyweight division, even if it is one of the UFC's weaker divisions. And I hate to say it because I really wanted Assakura to be an exciting addition to a division that really needs more excitement, but this guy's been exposed for the mid-tier fighter that he probably always has been. Unfortunately, in spite of the belts and the fanfare, he's just not a contender in a division that's not all that strong. In this case, I don't blame the UFC for pulling a big move and acquiring him because I also thought that he could prove to be a valuable asset, or at the very least be a guy that would be a part of some bangers. But the truth is, he's a guy that can't even make it out of the second round with Tim Elliott. If you are supposed to be a crossover superstar, you cannot lose to Tim Elliott. That is career-killing stuff. It's one thing to lose to Alessandro Pantoja, that's excusable, but losing to Tim Elliott is proof that he's nowhere near close to elite. UFC 319 proves something hardcore fans have been saying for years. Outside promotions inflate resumes. Bellator, Ryzen, 1FC, these orgs exist in ecosystems where the talent pool is miles shallower than the UFC. Bellator, Ryzen, 1FC, these orgs exist in ecosystems where the talent pool is miles shallower than the UFC. Sure, they can build stars, but those stars are often big fish in small ponds. The UFC is not perfect. Dana White will happily shove mediocrity down our throats when it suits him, but it still houses the best of the best. Hype trains rarely hold up because the competition they faced before wasn't remotely comparable to what they face in the UFC. Aaron and Kai are not unique. They're the latest in a long line of outside stars who got exposed once they hit the UFC. Of course, there are exceptions. I do think that promotions like Strikeforce and WEC proved that they had legit guys on their roster. And to Ryzen's credit, they did give us Yuri Prohaska, 1FC gave us RDR, and World Series of Fighting produced Justin Gaethje. But when it comes to Bellator, for every Eddie Alvarez, there are 10 more guys who can't hang. You can look like Anderson Silva in Bellator or Ryzen, but once you're here, you're just another guy trying not to drown. And in the case of Aaron Pico as well as Kai Asakura, they're just two more examples in a long list of examples that show just how far UFC competition really is. Admittedly, Admittedly, Pico did get screwed over by irresponsible matchmaking, but Kai Asakura is one of the most stark reminders in recent history that all the hype in the world means nothing once you're facing UFC level competition. Other promotions can make stars, but the UFC decides if they're legit. Anyways, that's the video for today. Definitely let me know what you think about Aaron Pico and Kai Asakura. Do you think they can still have a bright future in the UFC, and where do you think they go from here? As always, if you like the video, then like the video, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do so. I appreciate you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.
The UFC have brought out the big bucks and they have finally signed the biggest MMA fighter signing in recent UFC history to the promotion from Rising. This is massive news because this guy, Kai Asakura, brings an insane audience to the UFC. An absolutely insane audience. Now, the reason why I say this is the biggest MMA fighter signing in recent UFC history, I'm not just chucking that out there out of nowhere. I know we've had big names come to the UFC. We've had Brock Lesnar. We've had kickboxers come along like Alex Pereira. We've had CM Punk. I'm talking about an MMA fighter from outside of the UFC being signed to the UFC. This is the biggest one in recent history that I can think of.